What if the secret to helping someone break free from addiction isn't tough love or waiting for them to hit rock bottom, but connection, empathy, and strategy? In this episode, I sit down with Amber Hollingsworth, master addiction counselor and creator of Put the Shovel Down, to uncover the invisible interventions that help families stop enabling, start connecting, and truly outsmart addiction. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan. I'm Dan Peters, psychologist and leadership coach. This show is all about bringing hope, connection, awareness, and wisdom through meaningful conversations that inspire us to be better versions of ourselves and have a positive impact on humanity. This is your space to pause, reflect, and reconnect with who you are, what you care about, and who you want to be. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Amber Hollingsworth. Amber is a master addiction counselor, founder of Hope for Families Recovery Center, and the creator of the YouTube channel Put the Shovel Down. With over 2 decades of experience, she's helped thousands of families navigate addiction recovery using innovative, relationship-focused strategies like the invisible intervention, which we will be talking about today. Known for her relatable, no-nonsense approach, Amber empowers families to outsmart addiction, set healthy boundaries, and rebuild trust. Amber, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dan. Happy to be here.
So you're sort of a YouTube sensation in the I would say in the addiction space, but in the overall space, over 700,000 subscribers, and I think I saw a number of over 1 million downloads and the like. And I'm so curious to find out. Well, I want to know about your path to working in addiction,
Okay.
and then also when the YouTube spread happened for you, because you're clearly talking about something that a lot of people are interested in.
Absolutely. Should we start with how I got
Yeah,
into the
let's
addiction or
start with
how I
that.
got into
That was a
YouTube?
double question there. I got excited. Let's start with your path to working in recovery and
Okay.
addiction.
My path to being a therapist working with addiction is a little different than most. I feel like most people who do what I do are in recovery themselves and they have these great origin stories, and I'm so jealous I don't have a great origin story. Um, I landed here quite by accident. I am not in substance abuse recovery. I do come from an addicted family, as like really hardcore, as in my mom was doing meth with my sister hardcore. But that's not how I got in the field. I wish I could say that because that would even be a good origin story. But to be completely honest with you, Dan, I didn't even realize that my family was so addicted until I was in the field. And because when you grow up in it, it just seems like normal.
Normal.
You don't really know any different. I knew that people used drugs and alcohol, but I didn't attach a label onto it like addiction, which I certainly should have. It just never even occurred to me until I was here.
Mm.
So I went to school to be a teacher, and that was really hard. I taught high school for 3 years. Oh my gosh, that's the hardest thing ever. I don't recommend.
Yeah,
And
that's high school is tough. High school is
oh
tough.
yeah,
So I'm going to go into an easier field like addiction. Right.
I'm telling you, it is. So I was gonna get my master's degree in counseling, and naturally you'd think, or naturally I thought, I'll just be a school counselor because I was already in the school system. So, but I couldn't really afford to take off a whole year to be a school counselor intern. So at the last minute, I changed my major to community counseling so I could do an internship in the summer, and they threw me in a substance abuse program.
Hmm.
And because I had like a few months as an intern in a substance abuse program, and I had taught high school, the place that hired me when I was a baby counselor decided that I was equipped enough to design and run an adolescent chemical dependency program. Let me tell you, I
Fresh
was in
in.
over my head, Dan.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
far, far over my head. And that's what I mean when I say I got here by accident.
Wow. I think some will say by accident. And I do feel like your family of origin story definitely gives you some credibility, even though it wasn't intentional. You definitely have an understanding that others who did not grow up in that environment would. And something we talk about a lot on the show are these ideas of serendipity and synchronicity, and how we sort of somehow get led places, even if we are not consciously aware or trying to go there. And I'm sensing some of that with you, and because this has become your calling and your purpose.
I definitely feel this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was on a podcast recently with another guy who's also a therapist, and he therapusted me a little bit. He said, "Don't you think that maybe you subconsciously picked this?" And I couldn't really argue with him. I was like, I think you might be right.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
can't always argue with our subconscious or unconscious, right?
I
So yeah,
know.
he had you. He had
He
you
did. He
there.
got me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the YouTube and then just the exposure.
Sure. Well, when I was a baby counselor and I was in over my head, as in really in over my head, not only was I way further than I should be into this, but I didn't want my bosses to know that because it was my first job. So I decided that if I was going to do one thing, I needed to make sure these teenagers showed up to their appointment with me, which was 3 times a week for 3 hours. Getting addicted teenagers to show up Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 6 to 9 PM. Oh my gosh, that by itself was a job.
Yeah.
But that was my main mission, is to get these kids to show up, because otherwise I'd be found out that I had no idea what I was doing. They don't teach you this in counseling school. You
No.
get one class on addiction, and that involves going to a couple of 12-step meetings and writing like a paper on what it was like. That's it. That's all you got. And so I'm in there with these teenagers, and I'm focused on just getting them to show up. So in order to do that, I just had to build a relationship with them. I had to get them to enjoy talking to me.
Mm.
And that really is, in some ways, a gift and a vice for me. I used to be really insecure because I'm not in recovery. I don't have any cool stories. I didn't have any way to impress these teenagers. I had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But I did get really, really good at engaging them. And ultimately, that's been what's been successful for me in treating addiction, is listening to people. And in some ways, not being in recovery has been a gift for me, because I don't have a story to project onto them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't have that, well, I know exactly what you're thinking and exactly what you're doing because I did it all. So it forces me to have to really listen quite differently to people. Kind of like if you're blind, you might have better hearing. I feel like it's like a disability that led to an advantage or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I sort of got good at what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Then I left. I worked for an inpatient facility for like 10 years. I left to start a private practice. And one of the things that seems to be missing is the piece for the families. Because to be honest, the families are the ones that are looking for help. The people with addictions are usually pretty involved in avoiding getting that help. But I would constantly get these calls. I really want you to see my husband, but he won't come. I really want you to see my daughter, but she doesn't think she has a problem. And so I spent a lot of my time like coaching these families through how to get their loved one to come in, to even walk into the office or go to treatment if they needed to go to big treatment. And so that got me into the family model. And then I would hear people say, man, wish I had that on recording. I would think to myself, I say that 15 times a day. You just feel like you say the same 10 things over and over. And so I thought, well, I can put that on a recording. That was, YouTube was out by then. And I thought, well, okay, I'll just put it on YouTube for my clients. And then, I don't have to give the brain talk 100 times, a week. I can just say, go watch this video. And that's how I accidentally ended up in YouTube land. My plan wasn't to be a YouTuber. It was just a place to house some videos that I had created. So I didn't have to say the same thing over and over a million times.
Amber, there's a theme here, because we just stumbled upon your next accident that you fell into. And what I love about it is it's all necessity. Like, there was a reason you did this. Like, you needed to engage your teens. Then you was like, I need to get this information out so I don't have to repeat it. And people on the outside who are not coming to me can actually get this information. So there was a very earnest and like authentic reason for you putting yourself out there in these ways. And then it's turned into something, because it seems like it was pretty aligned with the work and what your goals were for the work and mission.
It's just practical reasons.
Yes.
Like, this seems like the best practical thing to do, as opposed to like these big, novel, grand ideas and plans. But people that know me well know that I am definitely a shoot first, aim later kind of person. I just jump.
Mhm.
And so it does make sense that I just sort of jump into things without overly thinking them.
In the 20 years plus that you've been in the field, what changes have you seen from when you started? Of course, I know you personally didn't have the experience, but I'm saying like in the field because I know you have very strong beliefs about what works and what doesn't work. So,
Mhm.
what has been the arc from your perspective of addiction recovery?
One thing I think that's a change for the good is that I feel like it's sort of cool it's in to be in recovery, and that's what I tell my
Mhm.
clients. I'm like, "Dude, everyone who's anyone's in recovery. I'm so jealous I'm not in recovery." I thought about lying about it for a while, but I just decided against it. Um, and when you think about it, there's so many people that are just out about being in recovery and talk about it that I feel like that makes it easier for other people to sort of say, "Yeah, me too," and I have this problem too, and to be able to work through it.
Mhm.
That's a good thing. A not so good thing is I feel like marijuana addiction is just through the roof because it's
Mhm.
been legalized in so many states since I started in the field, and the nature of that has really shifted. But
Right.
that's a whole
Yes.
side story.
That is a whole side story. I'm in California, and there's the
Mhm.
term California sober, right? And it's like,
Yes, that's a thing, yeah.
and it's this thing. So it's very complicated
Yes.
because it's a different form, right? It's a different
Mhm.
form. Something that I was really intrigued with in watching some of your videos is I like how you put stuff out there, and you just put that stuff out there honestly. And I know that some people might have a reaction to them, and that's part of the work. And the one I'm thinking about is when you're talking about people with addiction hiding behind their mental health issues, and
Yeah.
that's important. So go on to say, because you're not talking about they're making it up. You're just talking about how it's an excuse not to deal with the addiction.
That's exactly right. Yes. Um, Almost anyone who has an addiction has a mental health problem. They either had it to start with, which maybe even led to the addiction, or if they didn't have it to start with, the further you go into it, you're going to have depression, you're going to have anxiety, you're going to have symptoms of ADD, you're just going to have all these symptoms. There's no way around it. And a lot of people avoid dealing with their addiction by blaming it on the mental health, and the reason why this works so well is because families buy into it, because
Hmm.
families wanna know, like, "Why are they this way?" And you can throw them off with, "I'm just so anxious," or, "I had this trauma,"
Hmm.
and I don't wanna minimize those things are true, but it is a manipulative tactic that people with addictions use
Hmm.
to continue to do what they're doing. Like, for example, I was recently working with this fella who keeps struggling with relapse on a pretty severe stimulant, and his partner reached out and said, "I think it's because of the PTSD he has," which he definitely, and this complicated relationship with his mother, which he definitely has. And I've been talking to this guy every week though, and I'm like, "No, that's not, those things are there, but that's not why this guy's relapsing. This guy's relapsing because the dealer's like 2 streets over and keeps giving him credit."
Hmm.
It's really more simple than all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's kinda like me for a practical reason, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, how at what point actually I want to go back to what you learned about adolescence and how you really realized how to engage them. I have in the years past been a part of teenage outpatient substance abuse settings. And oh man, it is so hard to get people there. I mean, there are so many factors that would keep them there, whether it's their peers, whether it's their family, whether it's their community. Just being a teenager and saying, like, this is complete, absolute bullshit. Like, why,
Yeah.
what? Um, and so I want to highlight your point of counseling in general, adults, but particularly teenagers, and substance abuse in particular, or addiction. Um, Getting someone engaged and showing up, like, what would you say? What percent of it is that? Like, is it half? Is it more than half? Like,
Oh,
just
it's
getting
like
someone to keep showing up? Yeah.
95% that. I feel like most treatment focuses on telling someone what to do to get sober or stay sober, but they're missing the boat. Everybody knows what they need to do to get sober and stay sober. The key is motivating them to want to get sober, and that starts with motivating them to wanna show up, to sit in the building with you because you can't do anything if they're not there. So it's all about that relationship. And I learned it with teens, but it's true across the board no matter what age.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. How much is the family critical in the work that you do, right? To help someone towards sobriety, because there's all the models again in counseling and in all forms of counseling. There's the focus on the individual. There's the focus on the system sometimes.
Mhm.
How critical is it for your work?
It's all critical. It's everything. And the reason I say that is because families, when they're not strategic about how they're interacting with someone, they end up, it's not that they're causing the problem, but they end up helping a person stay stuck. And I mean that in more than like most addiction counselors say, like enabling, giving them money. What they end up doing is they end up playing what I call the villain role in this person's life, because every addict and alcoholic needs a villain. It's how they emotionally justify making the bad decisions that they're making, is they focus on sort of self-pity and resentment. And you have to have a character in your story that helps you to feel sorry
Mm-hmm.
for yourself and have resentment. It allows you to sort of like distract and focus on what someone else is doing wrong instead of your own choices. There's always a villain in the story. And the reason I know this from 20 years of working with people who have addictions, as long as that family member is still playing that role, they're not meaning to, the addiction is putting them in that role. But as long as that's happening, all the person will talk about. I cannot get a person to talk to me about anything else if that is still going on.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get any further than that. So first thing is the family has to stop doing that so that the person has nowhere else to like look or distract or blame.
Well, and there's this distinction you make
Yeah.
between helping and enabling.
Yeah.
And so, anyone who's dealing with this listening here, and this is for parenting too, like as a parent, there is often, it seems like, a fine line.
Mhm.
And I'm talking even outside of addictions and substance use, right? A fine line of when we're helping someone or whether we're enabling. And how do you lay that out for people, particularly in terms of addiction?
I have a formula for it that makes it kinda easy. When you help someone, you automatically leave feeling good about yourself, no matter who or what that person
Oh,
is. Like, I was walking one day and it had just been, I was outside my neighborhood and there had just been a rain, and I saw this little worm trapped under this little stick, and I picked the stick up and moved it, and I felt good about myself for the,
you helped. You
30
didn't
minutes.
enable them. You like help. You helped the little
I
worm.
helped them. You feel good about helping someone. You
Yes.
naturally, when you enable, you're usually helping, but you don't want to be, and you feel forced somehow, like, if I don't, this bad thing is gonna happen or whatever, whatever. And so you end up walking away from those interactions feeling kind of resentful and used and upset about whatever it is you had to do.
It feels
So if
yucky.
you're
It's
looking for
yucky.
the simple way to know is how does it
Yeah.
make you feel when you do that? Do you feel good about it? Or do you
Yeah.
feel kind of like either mad at yourself or resentful at the person? If that's
I've
going on, you're probably enabling.
I like that. And that is simple and practical. I'm also thinking of people who come by it honestly, right? They were in a family where there was enabling in the family system, and then because of their role in the family, they were raised to be enablers without even knowing at times what that even is. So I found there is a bridge to awareness that has to happen. So I imagine this is through education with some people too, to say like helping them get in touch with, does this feel good every time you continue to make excuses for this person, or when you give them money, or when you let them off the hook when they do not make a commitment that they promised
Mhm.
you again they would do. So I imagine it takes you got to help bridge it.
It eventually shows itself even in people who are just strongly wired to be caretakers, because
Hmm.
you do feel frustrated, and worst of all, you feel like you're taking care of someone else's responsibilities, which makes you feel frustrated. But then you feel even worse because this person sees you as the villain. And it's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I'm doing all this and that, and I'm the bad guy when I'm just trying to help?" It's just not a fun place to be.
No, that is the irony, right? The person who is doing the most to quote help but actually enable is the one who gets all the crap, and
Yes.
then is that negative target.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. um One of the things that you talk about a lot and what you have brought to the work is how getting beyond the old school model, like the old school traditional of rock bottom. Someone's got to hit rock bottom. You got to have tough love. And as you point out, there sometimes is a place for that, and sometimes there isn't. Sometimes a choice other than that.
Mhm.
But you have found a lot of success helping families support their loved ones in taking a stand against the addiction, getting sober without coercion, without conflict, without manipulation. So,
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that because I think there's a lot of people who are like, how do you do that?
Well, that whole saying, people have to hit rock bottom, and you hear people say, "Well, you have to want it for yourself." There's a grain of truth in that. I do think it has to get uncomfortable for someone to want to change. So the scale has to tip a little bit as far as the cons have to start outweighing the pros. But if the scale tips too much and the consequences are too huge, it's really hard to bring someone back from. The very nature of addiction is continuing to do something despite consequence. That's the definition. So
Hmm.
there is no consequence that's big enough that's going to make someone stop. People lose everything. They lose their marriages, their children, their freedom, their homes, their dignity, their passion. They lose everything and they still continue to do it.
Hmm.
So there's like a sweet spot. You want a person to get uncomfortable, and sometimes those little uncomfortable moments, I call them moments of clarity, or these little bottoms that kind of people run up against,
Hmm.
will give you a wake up call and make you start to think, you know what, maybe I don't want to do this anymore, or maybe I need to
Hmm.
cut it back, or something like that.
Hmm.
So you do need those moments, but it's really hope for something better that gets someone to make those changes stick.
Hmm.
So the uncomfortableness is part of the formula, but it's really just a little bit. And the most important thing to know about that, if you're a family member, is it is best if that uncomfortableness comes somewhere outside of you. If your loved one can link that uncomfortableness back to you in any way, they
Right.
will not learn the lesson. They will
Right.
feel like you are the problem, not like maybe I should change. Like, for example, if you called the cops and that's why your loved one got a DUI, they are not going to learn that lesson about what's really happening there. They're going to learn, I can't believe you called the cops on your own husband, son, daughter.
Yes.
So you want it to come from the universe. You want to let
Yes.
the universe play the bad guy and you play the good guy whenever possible. That's the formula.
I totally agree, and it so applies to parenting teenagers and young adults,
Oh,
even
yeah.
without addiction. It's the same. It's that same. Like the way to totally sabotage is you are the responsive. You're the reason that they've had a lesson, which will make it even worse than if they hadn't had the lesson,
Yeah, because
because
it's
yeah,
punishment
it's
in their
punishment
mind. It's,
and
yeah.
trust. Well, and lack of trust, breach of
Yeah.
trust, which
Mhm.
makes me go to interventions because you
Yes.
also talk about interventions and how interventions have been around for a long time and they sometimes work and they sometimes backfire. And even in the positive outcomes, sometimes people unfortunately are angry and resentful and just don't trust again. And I would say personally, I was part of one probably 30 years ago of a close friend and with his family. And it was a very powerful thing to be a part of. And it was successful, I'm happy to
Mhm.
say. Um, and the respect I had for that addiction counselor that took us through with such sensitivity and the combination of us all, and there were a lot of us expressing our love with a boundary. Um,
Mhm.
I just there was such an art to it, but I also know of several over the years that they don't go well.
Right. There's a lot of factors involved in that, Dan, and I think when you have a loved one who is what I call, like, in stage 4 addiction or alcoholism, as in they're dependent, they really can't stop, and their life is just completely unmanageable, and they at this point, they know that they are addicted. They've either just decided they can't stop, or they've just sort of given into it and just said, "Hey, this is just me," because that happens. People just say, "This is my course in life."
Hmm.
Um, but they're not stopping. If you take
Hmm.
someone like that, I don't care how you get them to go to treatment. If you get their brain cleaned up long enough, a lot of times they decide to stay sober. So
Hmm.
whether it's from an intervention or the court system puts them there, I think that's great. I'm for it.
Mhm.
Because the research shows it's not about why someone went into treatment, it's really more about how long they stayed, and that's just about letting someone's brain clear up so they can think, from their real selves. But if you're
So
dealing with
yeah.
someone who doesn't know that they have a problem or doesn't believe that they have that bad of a problem, as in someone that's in denial or someone that's still functional on some level, intervention, that kind like you're thinking of, or most people like on the TV show,
Yeah.
that doesn't go so well. Because
Mhm.
even if you have this whole thing and you get the person to go to treatment, if they have in the back of their mind that they're not really an addict or an alcoholic, when they go to those meetings and they go to treatment, they're going to be looking through the lens of how I'm not like them and how my situation's different. And at some point when they get out, they're going to go back to it. So it's a little bit of timing and about knowing what kind of situation I am in, where my loved one's at in their stages of change. If you're dealing with someone who's in denial, we need to deal with the denial first and then set up a getting help situation.
And is that where invisible intervention comes in?
That's exactly where invisible intervention comes in. That's
All
right.
right.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. What would be the first step for someone to be thinking about this approach?
The first step is to get out of the bag I roll. If you do nothing else, you have just expedited the whole process of your loved one figuring this problem out. If you just do nothing but refuse, I call it like bite the fish hook. They're going to throw you a fish hook. They're going to try to start arguing with you. If you've been the villain, they subconsciously want you to stay the villain. And they'll try hard to put you back in that villain role by lots of things. So the first thing is to get out of that. Second thing is to build credibility with someone, which is what therapists, what I do.
Mhm.
And when you build credibility with someone, the way you do that is you help this person feel and know that you understand them. Just like, and it's more than like you love them because they know you love them. And in some ways, it's kind of annoying that you love them because it's a lot.
Mhm.
It's not that. It's a I get you kind of thing. Like, for example, you may know your grandmama loves you, but you're probably not going to follow her advice if you don't think she understands your situation. So once you're out of this villain role, you build credibility with this person by using some reflective listening, by really sort of deeply soul searching, because you already know a lot about this person. What's good about them? What are their values? Why are they doing this in their mind? Are they doing it because it's the thing that's helping their anxiety? Are they doing it? Whatever it is, you don't have to agree with it, but you have to completely understand this person's point of view, and you have to be able to articulate that to them with empathy.
Mhm.
When you can
Mhm.
do that, your opinion starts to matter. First of all, they start going to you with things because they trust you as a good listener and as someone that's on their side.
Mhm.
And then when they get themselves in a situation, which they will, they're going to come to you and they're going to say, "What do you think I should do?"
Yeah.
Now you've built your credit up, just like building your credit score up, like if you're going to buy a house. I actually teach people in invisible intervention, like how to calculate your credit score with
Mm.
this person. And if it's not high enough, you don't dare have an opinion about anything. But when you get that right moment and you've built up your credit score, this person's actually going to come to you and want your take on
Mhm.
the situation. And
Yeah.
that's when you can play your cards. And that's when those cards will work, when you set it up just like that.
Yeah. Understanding, empathy, validation, honesty. And I
Mhm.
think, like, to me, when I think back of it was early in my career when I stumbled on what I came to turn a term, the clinical high. And that was like, where in the work was there that clinical high? And it was when you had, to use your words in hindsight, the credibility and the relationship was trusting that this person, I could say whatever I needed to say to them for
Mhm.
their best interest because they could
Mhm.
receive it from me because they knew where it was coming from. And that, like,
Bingo.
that's where
Right.
that's where the magic comes in the work.
Right. That's it exactly.
Hmm.
When you have kind of like with your best friend, you can say things to your best friend that you couldn't say to someone else because you have a thing, like you're on the
Hmm.
same wavelength. So
Hmm.
you have to build that kind of situation with someone. And this is what I've been doing for years and years and years, and it works. I'm not going to say every time, but almost
Hmm.
every time. And that's me dealing with people who didn't want to be sitting in my office in the first place, didn't think they had a problem. Um, all the reluctance in the world to come to see me. If I can do that and I only have like 50 minutes a week with someone as a
Right.
family member, you have access to them all the time and you have all the things to leverage. I got nothing. I got nothing.
Right. Right.
Other than I can fire you as my client, and trust
Right.
me, they wish I would in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah. At times. Right.
Right.
Well, and I feel like it is the benefit to not have the stake, right? The family members have such a stake in
Oh,
this
yeah.
for obvious reasons, and to not have the stake. And again, this is something that I learned over time, being someone who's more in a caretaking role at different types of my life. A lot of us who go into counseling, like that's a draw for us. We want to help.
Mhm.
Is to realize that this isn't my thing. This is your thing, and I really want to support you if you want the support. But I don't need to care about this more than you. But I'm here. I'm here to like go at it as much as you want while we're here. And I think that's where the families have it harder a lot of the times because all the
Oh, yeah.
history, all the history.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, easy for me to say. And everything about what I teach families is completely unfair. Like, it's like, are you kidding me? I'm paying
Yeah.
all the bills. I'm doing this and that. They're treating me terrible. And now you want me to use reflective listening with them? I get it.
Yeah.
It's not fair, but it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm like, it's not about
Yeah.
what's fair. It's about what
Yeah.
works. It's much easier emotionally for me to do. The good news is if you practice these techniques, it becomes easier and easier, not just because you're learning them, but because this person starts to respond to you so much differently,
Mm-hmm.
easier to like them because they
Mm-hmm.
start responding to you. So then it becomes more of a natural process. In the beginning, it's
Mm-hmm.
work.
All right. I want us to hit on what seems like elementary when it comes to recovery. Um, but I think people can't hear it enough when they're either the person who is struggling with the addiction or the family members who are trying to support them and or don't know how much more they can take. And
Mhm.
that is that recovery is not linear. It is
Right.
mostly not linear. And then also that old saying, relapse is part of recovery. Right.
Right.
I always think of from my friend who I was referring to way back in the day, talking about the idea of one drink does not make a drunk. One of those great AA, right? So instead of like, oh, I just had a drink, so I'm just going to town. I'm just gonna, pull an all nighter, have a bender. It's like, no, I had a drink. I'm gonna call my sponsor. I'm gonna call my counselor, and I'm gonna do something that I rarely ever do, which is own it
Mhm.
and course correct.
Right. Absolutely. I feel like when I have a client who's had a relapse, I immediately move into damage control. I feel like a lot of people want to magnify the issue and say, you got to go get a white chip. You're starting over. You're on day one. You got to start over on your steps. And I do the opposite. I say, oh, dude, this was one night. We are not starting over. We have come too far. If you had 287 days, I'm not going to give you yesterday because you used, but if you're sober today, we're going to go to 288 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just call it damage control. Because the last thing you want someone to do is get what I call the efforts, like what you're talking about, Dan, where someone's like, I've already screwed it up now, I might as well go all the way. Might as well not waste my relapse. Or they've
Right.
convinced themselves if I take one drink, I can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And they subconsciously fall into that. So yeah, I'm all about the
Mm-hmm.
damage control.
Yeah. When when do you know that someone's ready? You're doing the dance. They're either coming, they're resistant, they're coming for their family. Um, but then there's this shift. Like there's
Mhm.
this little light, this little sliver that happens. What do you normally see?
Most people go through this long process of what I call bargaining, which is before someone comes to terms with the idea that they're going to have to give it up completely and like change their whole life and just change everything. They're going to do a lot of bargaining, which usually involves some kind of version of cutting it back or just using this substance and not that substance or just using it on the weekends or just socially. And I've gotten pretty good at walking through that with people because it's a natural part. And for families, when they see this, they think they're never going to change. They don't mean it. And sometimes people will do even like, well, let me get sober for a couple of weeks or 30 days. And in their mind, they're proving to themselves that they're not an addict or an alcoholic. They're not really intending to stay sober, or they're proving to themselves that they're not an addict or an alcoholic or whatever. And that's okay because it's all part of the process. And instead of resisting that, I lean into it and I say, all right, tell me what it is you want to do. Say, well, I just want to drink beer and not liquor, whatever it is. I say, I like it. That probably would help a lot. You would get
Mm-hmm.
yourself in a lot less trouble if you did that. Let's try that. And then I'll plant a seed by saying something. Some of my people find that they can't do that, and they always end up going back to the other. Others of my people find that they can do it, but it's really hard and it's almost not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I plant these little seeds about these possible outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say, we're going to figure out how that works for you. And don't worry, we got plan A, B, C, all the way to Z. And if this don't work, we'll try the next thing. So you sort of set it up for them to learn that lesson and to not even be worried about telling you it didn't work, right? They don't have to lose any ego by doing that.
Right. Well, the way you're setting that up is the word that was coming to me as I was listening to you model those questions is respect. You're actually engaging with them with respect. Like, here's what some people do, or hey, that's a good idea. You might want to try that, but here's my experience. Like this is what I've seen. So that we talked about relationship, and it should go without saying, but I think that people feeling respected as humans, because when you're struggling with this thing, right, it is one of the most powerless feelings that one can have. And most people don't like to be out of control, and to have an addiction, that's something that is running your life. To engage in that it takes a lot of courage to have these conversations and even engage in the process.
Right. Yeah. You're right. People don't like to feel out of control. They may like what a substance does for them. They don't like the out of control part. So what they try to do is they try to damage control the out of control part by finding these little loopholes and trying all these bargains. But the thing of it is people have to run through all their bargains. You can't skip it, but you can speed it up by saying, yeah, let's do that. Let's put that on your treatment plan. I like it, and then we'll just
let's try that. Let's take a test. Let's get to this one, right? Get all the bargaining out there. Okay, let's systematically go through all of the bargaining.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's get it out of the way, because that's the only way. Because I think your question was, how do you know when someone's there? That's how I know when someone's there. We've tried it. When people call me up and they say, I said I'm ready to get sober, I say, what have you tried? And if they don't tell me 10 things, we're not ready. If they don't tell me, I'll say, well, why don't you just cut it back? And if their answer isn't because I tried that and it didn't work, then I know we're close, but we're not all the way
there. You mentioned earlier the challenges of a functional alcoholic or a functional addict. So say a little bit about that, because those are the ones that I think people in families feel like they might be going a little nuts, and it's really frustrating. I know you also talk about gaslighting that happens with a lot of people who are dealing with addiction issues. And it's like, I'm fine, right? I'm fine. I do my job. I take care of all my responsibilities, but there's still a problem that impacts family.
Oh, yeah. And that's mostly what I see these days is a lot of what I call not just functioning, but high functioning, high achieving.
High achieving. Okay.
A lot of businessmen who drink too much, a lot of physicians and lawyers and marathon runners and, just like really A-type people, but who are nonetheless alcoholic. The thing of it is the spouse sees it first before anyone else sees it, because that's the first ball they're going to drop. It's the ball at home. They're not going to drop the work. They're going to be able to sort of function well enough that everyone else thinks they're fine. And so, because the spouse is the only one that sees it, the spouse is the only one that's bringing it up. And now you're immediately in the villain role, and they're thinking, no one else has a problem with it. I told my friend Jake that you think I drink too much, and he said, you're crazy. I don't drink half as much as he drinks. But the rest of the people aren't seeing the balls that are getting dropped at home. The fact that you're coming home and you're drinking and you're going to sleep every night at 7 and you're not helping out, or that you're forgetting that you said you were going to do this with your kid or whatever. And so there are ways to get through to functional alcoholics. In fact, I feel like they still have so much to lose. And the fact that they don't want to be alcoholic is great, because it means they haven't accepted it. And it means that they can U-turn this thing around. It's just about getting them to see it and to want something.
Yeah, that's actually a fascinating approach, which is if someone's digging in so hard that they do not want to be labeled an alcoholic, it's like, well, why? Why? That must be bad then, right? Like, that must be bad for you. So what is it about that you don't want to be that? And how would we know if you were, right? It's like you back into this. Like, how would we know, like, what would have to happen for you to actually see yourself as an alcoholic?
Mhm. Exactly, and I think that gets to what someone's core values are, and that's a lot of what I look for in people, like what's really important to them and how do they want to be seen and how do they see themselves, and I just mirror that to them. I don't even have to talk to them about their drinking. I'll just listen to them and I'll say, "It's really important for you to be a good dad. I can tell because you told me this and this and this." And they will, in their own mind, start to connect that dot. "Yes, it is. And I didn't show up to my son's ball game last night. I promised I would help with this." I don't have to connect that dot.
Hmm.
They'll connect it.
Hmm. Um, Trauma. You talk about how addiction leads everyone to trauma. Right? When there's addiction in a family, you cannot not experience trauma.
Right. For the person and everyone else that lives in the house with them, 100%, definitely.
Hmm. But what I thought was interesting is on a recent episode, uh, you were talking about with your guest who is an expert on betrayal trauma,
Mhm.
and that's not something that I've spent much time with. And then you went on to talk about the difference between codependency versus betrayal trauma. And tell everyone a little bit about this, because we do need to talk about codependency. It's like enabling. It's that word that is used so much in the work and in
Mhm.
the literature. And I think it gets used so much and so broadly. I think sometimes the whole what it is watered down.
Right. People, when they say the word, sometimes they mean that you're just people-pleasing person and you can't say no. Sometimes people mean that you live with an addict or an alcoholic, and that's what they mean by the word. Sometimes people mean that you're sick just like the addict or alcoholic and you can't stop enabling them. So people have all these different points of view on what makes someone codependent and where they're coming from. But betrayal trauma is a totally different set of symptoms. It really is like your entire alarm system gets shattered. Your physical body is shattered. You are living in a state of fear and crisis all the time, and you're coming from that emotional state. It's not about people pleasing. In fact, usually when you have that betrayal trauma, you're angry and you're upset, and you sort of alternate between yelling and threatening and giving ultimatums and begging and pleading and promising, and you're just on a roller coaster.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you see betrayal trauma versus, do you talk about them differently with people? Codependency versus betrayal trauma when you're supporting the family members to help them understand what their how to, I guess, better understand and explain the experience and validate the experience that they're having.
Right, because they get these labels from the outside that make them feel even worse, and they already feel terrible, like, "You're making this problem worse, or you're enabling." But when you live with someone and you care about someone who has an addiction, it's a human nature to get scared and
Yeah.
to wanna protect them, and all of us move into these predictable patterns, and it's
Hmm.
not because something's wrong with you, it's because you're in this situation. It's just as predictable as what the addict or alcoholic's gonna do.
Hmm.
What their family is gonna do is very predictable as well. And so, we just talk about the natural dynamics of that and why that happens and how to pull themselves out of that cycle that they're in.
What is the main one or two things that you see when people relapse? Like people who've actually been in recovery and they're working their system, they're working their steps, and then they have a relapse. Are there themes that you see?
Normally, the theme is that at some point, whether that was impulsively in the moment or weeks leading up, they've decided this time is gonna be different. They've decided that it's
Hmm.
different now. It's a lot more that than it is some kind of giant emotional trigger. When someone has pretty stable recovery for a while, it's usually not the huge emotional triggers. It's more that like an opportunity intersects with this like I can get a different outcome. I
Yeah.
won't do it like I did before. I'll
Right.
stay away from this person. I won't drink this or smoke that or
Yes.
it's I will get a different outcome. They convince themselves of that.
That's consistent. I had a previous guest who was in recovery and does this work as well. And her terminology that she said was, which I think is what you're, a different way of what you're saying is they let their guard down. They
Yeah.
kind of like, right? Like just kind of think like, yeah, I'm good. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been sober for 2 years. Like, I got this problem under control. I'm not in all that crisis like I was before. I'm so much more stable. I'll get a different result.
Hmm.
They convince themselves that it'll end different.
Yeah. What advice do you have for families right now, like of addicts? Someone's family members are dealing with an addict who is
Mhm.
either not in recovery or in pre-contemplation. Um, Actually, we should talk a little bit about those stages. I think that'll be helpful. But before we do that, what what advice do you have for them?
Well, I would just say that you're not powerless. I know everyone's telling you that, and you're getting this feedback from lots of different places that's basically kinda telling you to step back, cross your fingers, and hope for the best, and maybe this person will hit a bottom and figure it out. Um, but a lot of times if this is your spouse or this is your kid, that's sort of unacceptable. You want something more than that. You need something more than that. It is true that you cannot control someone, but it's also true that you have a lot of influence. And I know maybe it feels like you don't because you've tried a lot of different things and it hasn't worked. But that's only because you're kind of in an alternate universe. You're in the upside down world. And once you understand the rules of the upside down world, you can play your cards differently and you can have him.
Hmm. So let's move into the stages of change, because I
Hmm.
think that is another. It's both as a family member and as a person who's dealing with the addiction. It's helpful to know that these are normal stages of change where we start from not quite ready to do this yet and work our way towards, yeah, I'm ready. I want to step into this.
Right. And those stages, a lot of it is the bargaining. And I think the important thing to know as a family member is you have to assess where your loved one it really is in their stages of change. Like for example, if someone doesn't think they have a problem and you're trying to talk to them about getting help, you have just taken your credit score to 0 because you clearly don't get it. You clearly don't understand me at all. So if someone is in denial, your goal isn't to get them to go to treatment. Your goal is to get them to see the problem. And if
Mm,
someone sees the problem, your goal probably still isn't to get them to go to treatment, is to get them to run through all these bargainings that they have. So it's about understanding where are we right now and where is the next step.
hmm.
And naturally, when you're scared, because someone you love is ruining their life and yours probably, you want to expedite the process. And I get
Hmm.
it.
Right,
But when you try to rush it, you end up slowing it down,
right.
you know, not on purpose, but that's what happens.
Right, and again, the idea of having them run through the bargaining as all their bargaining as part of the process and asking the questions, seeing this as part of the process. Like you said, family members, even though you feel very powerless, and at times it can be very powerless, but the idea that you can actually ask some questions that are to help people think. Okay, so you just got a DUI, and you're saying you don't have a problem. A lot of people get DUIs. How many DUIs would you need to get to consider that this might be something that's bigger than you? That like it's just these little questions that it's almost Columbo for those of us,
Right. That's
right?
exactly
Older
right. You
people,
can
right?
have them set their own lines in the sand, and then
Yes.
when they cross them, it's like you sort of another thing you can do is if you're just empathetic when they run into these consequences, if they get the DUI, you can say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I know you feel terrible. You did not mean for that to happen. You're embarrassed. It's gonna cost you some money. Oh my gosh. I feel so bad for you." When you're empathetic with someone, it actually activates the learning center of their brain. And if you'll respond to them like that, instead of what you want to say, which is, I told you not to do that, and I knew this was gonna
Hmm.
happen, and you probably should have got 10 already, that's what you probably want to say. If you'll say the other thing, their brain will start to connect the dots of, yeah, I really gotta change. I gotta do something.
Hmm.
Because the empathy activates the right part of their brain and it just gives them the safety to get
Hmm.
honest with themselves because you're not attacking. So they'll be more real with their own self.
What advice do you have for people who are struggling with addiction who might be listening?
Um, what I have for those people is you do not have to hit bottom. You hit your bottom when you put your shovel down. That's the name of our channel. You can decide when to stop digging at any point. You don't have to lose everything. You don't have to burn every bridge. You just have to know you're headed in that direction and you don't want to go in that direction.
Put the shovel down.
That's right.
Is there a story about that where that name came from?
One of the teenagers way back in the beginning, he used to say that all the time.
Hmm.
Just put the shovel down. And he would say, you hike 7 miles into the woods, you have to hike 7 miles out. Like, all right, we're 3 miles in. You want to put it down now? We can turn around. Do you want to go 10 miles in? What do you want to do? I wouldn't say it like that, but that's
Yeah.
the concept.
Wisdom.
Yeah.
How do you keep hope? This is tough work.
The average lifespan of someone in this field is 5 years. At least that's what the statistics say. That's what I was told. Which is sad because it takes longer than that to become an addiction counselor. It's
Mhm.
kind of unfortunate. A lot of money, a lot of time. For me, my goal in working with people isn't so much that I'm going to make this person never pick up or use again. My goal when I work with someone is to make sure that they have a really good experience so that if they do pick up and use again, they'll either come back to me because they'll be like, yeah, I'm going to go to Amber because that's my person, or go somewhere else and not feel nervous about it and have a good experience with recovery. And they'll know exactly what to do. They won't be afraid to take those steps. And if that's your goal, you can control that to a large degree and you don't get nearly as burnt out. When you think that someone is never going to do this or that or the other again, then you get burned out because you start to see it as a reflection of who you are and you get mad. And then you start ending up being one of these people who says, well, come back when you want it. I guess you just haven't suffered enough,
Yeah.
because you're attaching your own worth to it. And that'll get you frustrated.
Did you always have those boundaries or did that come with experience?
I learned it pretty quickly early on, because I worked in a system, a big hospital system, and I could see people with all that compassion fatigue, and it is a revolving door. People coming in and out, in and out, in and out, and it will wear you out. So you have to change your thinking on what it is you're trying to make happen there so that you feel successful.
There it is, people. There it is. Amber, well, thank you for the work, for what you're putting out there. It is so user friendly. I mean, it's information for people in a very non stigmatizing, informative, educational, and compassionate way. With it is hope. Like you believe. I could see when I watch you on your videos and in your podcast, like you believe people can make these changes, and you don't know when exactly or how it's going to go, but you have a belief that they can, and you're going to show up to support them.
I see people beat this thing every single day, all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, wonderful. Hear that, everyone? Everyone listening with some concern. This human journey is complicated, to say the least, and this is addiction and substance use and abuse is one of the things that many get with the human condition, often from families and other environmental circumstances. So just please know that you're valued. You're valued and you have choice. And we're pulling for you. Tell everyone where they can find the Put the Shovel Down and your center and your practice.
The best place to find me is on YouTube. There's more than 1,000 videos there for you. No matter which angle you're coming at this from, I'm sure there's a playlist made just for you. The channel is called Put the Shovel Down, and it is a great place to start. It's free. So much help there. I suggest that look for me there. I'm other places, but YouTube's the best place.
That's the best place.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dan.
Amber speaks with such calm and clarity, and through decades of experience in helping individuals and families find their path through addiction to recovery. Here is her wisdom distilled in 5 key takeaways. Number 1, addiction recovery isn't linear. Relapse is often part of the process, and progress is measured in persistence, not perfection. Number 2, families hold more influence than they think, but only when they step out of the villain role and engage with empathy rather than conflict. Number 3, the invisible intervention works by building credibility, respect, and trust before offering guidance or pushing for treatment. Number 4, helping versus enabling is defined by how it feels. Helping leaves you empowered. Enabling leaves you resentful and drained. And number 5, hope is stronger than rock bottom. Change comes not from punishment, but from small moments of clarity and the possibility of something better. Thank you for listening, everyone. This is a topic that is essential and something that many families can benefit from. Many people who are wondering, in pre-contemplation, in contemplation, and wanting to do something about this. There is hope. There are resources, and Amber has many of them. Thank you for listening, for subscribing, for being a part of our amazing community, for your 5-star reviews. They really do make a difference. And remember, we have our new free growth path quiz to help you find out your growth type, where you are on your journey, your strengths, your challenges, and your edges, to give you resources to move you forward on your path. Go to www.drdanpeters.com/quiz and have some fun. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Uplifting Folk by Awesome Music. Artwork by Kelly Dwyer. Follow us on social media at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, visit drdanpeters.com.